So far in this podcast series, the short daily podcast that I'm bringing you, entitled Get a Better Broadcast Podcast and Video Voice, we've talked mainly about audio studios, but of course there is a slightly different technique for when you're sitting, when you're presenting video and TV and things like that, and how that's going to be affecting your voice. So that's what we're going to be talking about today over the next couple of 3 minutes. So how you should sit for video and how that affects your voice. Sit up with relaxed erectness, and even though you may face directly at a camera, if you're behind a desk, presenters are on a kind of breakfast show type sofa, usually more uncomfortable than they look, believe me. You may be asked by your director to sit at a slight angle towards your co-host, and some presenters have to sit with their lower body pointed one way, but then everything else above the waistline facing the camera. Yeah? Do you see what I mean? You've got two people on a breakfast type sofa or a light entertainment evening show, you know, like the One Show, for example. And your lower body is pointing towards your co-presenter, but your upper body inevitably has to look towards the you're looking towards the camera. You've got a twist in your lower torso. Be careful about how that's going to affect your voice. You're putting quite a bit of strain there on your lower back. It's twisted, and it could be for 2 or 3 hours. It's one thing to tell you about when you're sitting and kind of trying to use your voice in a TV studio. Here's another thing. Be careful not to slouch or lean into the corner of the sofa, because that's going to affect your voice as well. And realise also that sitting with your arm across the back may make you look arrogant and a little bit kind of lopsided. I've done quite a few TV shows. I presented a cable TV show for several years, and it's funny that you think you're sitting and you think you're sitting straight, but when you actually see yourself on the monitor, you realise that you're a little bit lopsided, or you're looking a little arrogant because your body language is a bit too big, or you're not pointing the right way, or you look a bit too loud, a bit too butch, a bit too masculine, or a bit kind of small, or a little bit awkward, or your knees are pointing the wrong way, or you've got your legs together when they should be slightly apart, not so far apart that you're kind of mansplaining or anything like that, but you don't necessarily want to have your knees together and your feet so you're looking a little coquettish either. It's really quite difficult to actually do. And if you're feeling awkward, particularly with the lights on and the crew standing there watching you and the cameras there and reading the auto cue and hearing something, you're going to feel a little bit nervous anyway, most likely. So you want to make sure that there's something that you can control, like your sitting position, and therefore your voice is something that you do control. The combination of a sofa and sitting awkwardly can potentially cause a problem with your posture and then with your voice. And it's worth a mention as we're talking about it that because video directors of sofa-type chat shows like to get several people in the same shot, guests, so not necessarily presenters, but guests, may be asked to sit very closely together. And, you know, so everyone's in the same shot, everyone's on the same sofa. And that proximity to anyone except a close family member may make them feel awkward, particularly if you're a certain age, or you've got a certain background or a certain religion or something, crammed on a sofa with other people who happen to be talking about the same subject but you don't actually know them, may make them feel awkward, and that awkwardness may cause tension and stress which be heard in their voice. Also, as we will see as the podcast progresses, most people have a natural tendency to speak in the volume that is suitable for the proximity of the listener. Let me say that again. Most people have a natural tendency to speak in the volume that is suitable for the proximity of the listener. Apart from that one person we all know who speaks in a really loud voice. You know, that voice that really just kind of carries, a bit like this, which is really kind of loud. And we got one in the office. Boy, oh boy. Now, the effect of all of this is that sitting close to someone else with that person's ear may be a foot away, they may not project their voice quite as much as a sound engineer would like. Yeah, they feel as though because they're really close to somebody else that they've got to speak in a quieter voice. If that person wasn't sitting beside them, but they were talking to the person on the other sofa, the presenter, the other side of the camera, the other side of that desk, the other side of that coffee table, they would naturally have a louder voice. But they drop it in volume, in projection, because someone is sitting right beside them. Okay. Talk a bit more about projection tomorrow as the podcast continues. This is the audio version of the book I'm writing, Get a Better Broadcast Podcast and Video Voice. Check it out later on in the year. Search for that. I'm Peter Stewart.